setting. I mean,
No.
we hang out, watch football, play cards, but we
Mhm.
don't get to really talk about God's word a lot in front of a
Yeah.
camera or people
Yeah.
or anything else.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, it is. Today's all about gratitude, which I
Mhm.
think is funny because it's day 17.
Mhm.
People are at the end of their 21 days in prayer and fasting, and probably, if we're going to be honest, they're not feeling grateful right now. They're
Right.
just trying to get through
Uh-huh.
to the end of the fast. And so this one coming in at gratitude is really important for all of us just to kind of really solidify
Mhm.
the reasons why we not only fast, but the reasons why we want to remain faithful and loyal and with grateful hearts to the Lord.
Yeah, and I love the title, Beginning with Gratitude. And I
Mm.
think about myself beginning the day when I wake up and I think, am I beginning the day with gratitude or am I waking up with all these lists of things of I need to do this today or this is going to weigh me
Mm.
down, all these things. And it takes me to Psalm 77 where the writer says in verse 11, "But then I recall all you have done, O Lord, and I remember your wonderful deeds of long ago." And I thought, I love that. And I said, well, let me look what's happening verses 1 through 10. And I mean, the writer is just going through it saying, I cry out to God, I shout, he doesn't listen. To go as far to say, you don't even let me sleep. Has the Lord rejected me forever? Will he never again be kind to me? Have his promises permanently failed? And I just start thinking, wow, we got ourselves pretty deep in this, all this trouble. But then all of a sudden it goes to verse 11, but then I recall all you've done. And I'm grateful. I think what would happen in this, in this passage or in our
Mm.
own life if we started with verse 11, if we started with, but then I remember, you know?
Yeah, I wish I could say that I'm sitting here going, yeah, absolutely. But I think I can do that.
Right.
I've said several times this week, I'm really tired from a schedule that's going on. I'm pre-tired for the next week already for things, and I can go down that rabbit hole
Hmm.
sometimes. How do we avoid that rabbit hole, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, for me, practically,
Mhm.
for me, I have to write it down. I have to
Ah,
remind myself, I have to be active about it because we live in such a world that it's here's what you need to do, here's all the things going wrong.
mhm.
It's so easy to be down in the weeds
Yeah.
instead of, and I feel like I have to work myself to be grateful, to have, live a life of gratitude instead of beginning that way.
Yeah, it's almost like intentionally deciding to be instead of being in the weeds, to get at the 30,000-foot level and
Right.
look at the perspective that God sees it from.
Yeah.
Another writer in Psalms in 103, David says, and he just says, "Bless the Lord, O
Hmm.
my soul, and all that is within me. Bless his
Yeah.
holy name. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits." And I think
Hmm.
one of the things that stands out to me is he's not preaching it to everybody else. We get to read it,
Right.
but he's actually talking to himself. Bless the
Yeah.
Lord, oh my soul. Sometimes I've got to remind myself how good God is
Yeah.
from an overall perspective. And he says, he forgives my sins. He heals my diseases. He redeems me from
Hmm.
death. He crowns me with love and tender mercy. He fills my life with
Hmm.
good things.
Right.
He's intentionally saying, on a time that we focus on the little things, like he called
Hmm.
get in the weeds,
Right.
he's intentionally focusing on the greatest things that are happening in our life, and they all are about what God has done.
Yeah, which I love. And I think for me, that's something I learned from David is like speaking it out loud, like
Hmm.
saying it out loud that, your words have power and speaking all the great things the Lord has done. And I think I'll speak for myself. I can start thinking, what are all the great things that Maddie can do for Maddie today?
Hmm.
Instead of thinking of what are all the things the Lord has already done for you that you need to be
Right.
grateful for today.
Yeah. Yeah, I think about you mentioned intentionally writing them down. I think about how we set sometimes reminders for all the to-do lists that we have.
Hmm.
We set alarms to make sure we wake up on time.
Hmm.
What would happen if we set reminders or alarms that as we're getting dressed in the morning and we know we're at our low spot before we've had coffee, or
Hmm.
we're in traffic and we know that,
Right.
what if there's an alarm that goes off that says, remember God saved you.
Hmm.
Remember God healed you. Remember God gave you these wonderful things during this time.
Yeah.
What would change in us, I wonder, if
Right.
that were to happen?
No, I agree. You would be forced to think.
Yeah.
Think about those things, set your eyes
Hmm.
to those things, which I think would be beneficial for me.
Yeah, and me too. I also think it's striking that in both chapter 77, Psalm 77, and in Psalm 103, two different writers that are in a difficult part of their
Hmm.
lives intentionally having to come to a place where they realize God is still good.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of times people say, well, yeah, I could get up in the morning and just think about all the good things God has done, but this is not about my schedule being busy. This is not about me
Right.
having a small headache or I'd have my coffee or anything,
Right.
or I've got a test coming up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going through the worst time of my life,
Mm-hmm.
and you're asking me to focus on things that God is doing in my life, and it's really hard during those times. But I
Yeah.
know that in my family, during our most difficult time of
Mm-hmm.
loss in our family, at the same time, within a year of that loss, one of the things that Laura and I were praying about for years was that God would bring a godly spouse into Bradley's life. And in that year's time, Bradley and you met, you dated, and you guys got married.
Yeah.
And I can see that the loss is still great, the pain's still great. And yet there's this wonderful blessing that's come into our lives as
Yeah.
well. And it's so striking to know that even during difficult times, God is still good to us.
Yeah. I mean, I talk with families all the time throughout the week,
Mm-hmm.
Wednesdays, Sundays, parents and students who are struggling with real things and
Mm-hmm.
wondering, how do I set my eyes above? How do I set my eyes to the good things the Lord has done?
Mm-hmm.
And I know, like, for myself, and I know for you too, like, we want to be examples of that. And I love that example. It's like, hey, this can be your reality. You can go through the tough things you're going through and also be grateful for what the Lord has done.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's, how do you make that true in you, in yourself, so that other people can see that?
Yeah. I think it's allowing real truth
Mm-hmm.
to come into the real world,
Yeah.
not some cliches or platitudes. It's the reality of who God is, literally allowing it to invade my life and change the circumstances
Yeah.
that I'm in. So I hope my prayer is, I know your prayer is that as we're finishing 21 days of prayer and fasting, it won't be just people trying to cross the finish line,
Right.
but they'll come out with gratitude knowing that
Yeah.
God is really good even during their most difficult times.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.